Hi and welcome to the first preview video for Hyper Juken Alpha Set 1, the new challenges. Each set of Hyper Juken contains 3 fighters, one red, one blue and one yellow. Today we will be looking at the red fighter for Alpha 1, Lucy the Shih Tzu, the Chrysanthemum Princess. A fresh face in Hyper Juken, Lucy taught herself martial arts through consuming pop culture. Movies, anime, wrestling and video games. The fun-loving and excitable Lucy is a master of copying what she sees. Lucy's red deck is the best beginner experience out of the first set. Simple, yet fun and effective. Lucy's whole focus is getting into her hyper form, hitting hard, and never letting up. A relatively straightforward aggro deck, Lucy does have some fun interactive tools at her disposal. Lucy's Burst Fighter card helps her get into hyper form, as do a bevy of other cards in her arsenal, and one of her Kata cards. When you initiate combat as Lucy, raise your hyper 2. Simple, over a fifth of the way there from the get-go. As we'll see in coming weeks, Lucy has tools at her disposal to enter her hyper form in the very first turn, hitting the ground running. When Lucy finally enters her hyper form, the real fight begins. Her attacks all gain +2 power, and the attribute keyword Chip X. Now when her attacks are blocked, she inflicts chip damage to her opponent equal to her attack's level. This happens the moment the opponent blocks the attack, before any of the block card's effects are used. A lot of the time, unless Lucy is running low on ki, this inflicts 1 or 2 chip damage, but it's still something and it still adds up over time. It's forward momentum, even if you're not getting the full impact of the attack. Speaking of momentum, if she gains hyper again, she can choose to pay max hyper by setting it to 0 in order to draw a card. There is no reason not to pay the hyper in this deck, and the +1 is very powerful in Hyper Juken, especially if you draw an attack card you can use. Lucy keeps going, and chances are you have more actions than your opponent. If it is an attack card you can perform, it likely can't be blocked. Just a note, trigger effects only go off once per turn, so if you raise your hyper to max twice in one turn, you cannot use that effect again. However, during the next turn, the moment you try to raise your hyper again, the effect will automatically trigger. Our first card in Lucy's arsenal is Burst Takedown, a level 2 attack with 6 power. Attack effects are used the moment you perform the attack, and Burst Takedown raises your hyper 2. The Burst Fighter's ability to enter hyper form interrupts other abilities as soon as there is a full stop. So if this causes Lucy's hyper to hit max, she will become a hyper fighter. The second half of Burst Takedown's effect introduces us to the hyper fighting keyword. You may only use hyper fighting effects if your fighter is a hyper fighter, but this one is fairly strong. Your opponent must pay 2 ki to block it. Ki is the resource used to perform attacks, some effects, and unlock others. It's not the easiest thing to get large amounts of, especially for some playstyles. Burst Takedown can either take your opponent off guard, they physically cannot pay the cost, or they have to make a tough decision depending on their hand. Then they are hit with a now 8 power attack, 20% of their arsenal. Alternatively, if they block it, not only are they down 2 ki, they take 2 chip damage. Thank you for watching the first Hyper Juken preview video. Come back next week when we look at the second character of Alpha Block Set 1, the new challenges, the Blue Fighter.